Welcome to the OBR Streaming Network. This is a brand new edition of the React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. Good to see you here with us tonight. With a full night of programming. Hope you enjoyed Jeff Floyd at 6, and you'll have Garage Beers with special guests tonight at 9 after us. Good to see you all filing into the chat. Make sure you slap that like button and hit that subscription button for us. What is going on, Pete Smith? How are you, sir?
Well, with a week until Veterans Report, I have managed to avoid getting arrested for the extent of the break. I hope to continue that until we get back to training camp. By the way, I will mention that Garage Beers has the head coach of the Blue Jackets for anyone who's into that. So tune into that after we're done here.
Yes, they get great guests around the Cavs organization, Guardians, and Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets head coach tonight, so tune into that for sure. Well said, sir. All right, so we obviously can't really avoid the elephant in the room here. There's a lot that kind of goes into this that we're going to discuss. Let's what's up, World's Fast? What's up, Fumble? What up to everybody in the chat? Glad to see you here. We're gonna start with Pete with a video from 92.3 this morning, but with Mike Florio, lawyer. He's pretty. This is probably where he excels.
Yes,
he is best. When we talk about the league penalty, legal penalties, the combination of both is kind of his specialty. So this is where we will jump off with this topic. We can stop and talk about it as we go through, as there's a lot to unpack here. So let's begin. Courtesy of the Ken Carmen Show, Ken Carmen and Anthony Lima Show on 92.3 The Fan.
Right now, and he joins us on the fan hotline from Pro Football Talk and NBC Sports. Also has ebooks out right now that you can find on Amazon, Father of Mine and Son of Mine. You know, he's an author and a writer. And I believe you are now, wait a minute, did you pass the bar, Mike? I'm sorry. You're a lawyer?
Yeah, I practiced for 18 years. I passed the bar twice, once in Pennsylvania and once in West Virginia.
I'll be dipped. Okay, I thought so. But I'm like, because there's a lot of guys who used to be like lawyers, and then they're writers, and I'm like, well, okay, which ones are which? So
that was not one of the Chat GPT questions that Ken just asked.
With what's going on with Quinshon Judkins here, this Browns running back, and then we'll go to an NFL standpoint if we can.
Well, misdemeanor, domestic battery. The police report was released yesterday. Closed fist punch to the mouth chin area of a former.
All right, hang on. We're having some kind of audio issue here. Can you hear me okay, Pete?
Yep.
Loud and clear?
Yep, I hear everything.
Yeah, I can hear everything fine. For some reason, it's you guys can tell me in the chat. Is it any better now? Let me take a look here. What's going on? Crackling. Do you hear any crackling?
I hear nothing.
I hear nothing too. There's a stutter. Huh. Let me check what's going on here. They automatically adjust. What if we take the auto adjust off? Is that any better? Is that any better? No, worse. not just one aspect. There it is again. Still the same. Okay. Well, I don't really know what to do about this, Pete. Let's see here. Let's try this. Any better here? No. That was an echo. Check 1, 2. Check, check. Check. Nothing. Still sounds bad. Echoes. Any skipping, you guys? Any better sound coming through? Good, Connie? We sound good now? Are we any better? Not now? Okay on Twitch at the moment? Maybe fixed. All right. Let's try this again. All right, Pete, you ready?
Yep.
Sounds straight now. All right. Well, somehow we fixed it. Thank you, chat, for bearing with us for the moment.
Or maybe more on again, off again girlfriend. She waited a few days to decide to make the report, which is understandable under the circumstances. Look, I don't know what's true and what's not true, but it would be understandable that somebody wouldn't want to immediately call 911 and derail someone's career. Maybe she wanted to try to work through it. Maybe it just took her time. She told the police. She talked to friends and family about it and decided to make the report. She still had visible bruising. She had pictures from the day after the incident where the bruising was even more evident, according to the police report. So that's what he faces under Florida law, misdemeanor domestic battery. But the separate issue is what the NFL will do about it. And one thing we've learned over the past 11 years, all the way back to the Ray Rice case, the NFL does not look kindly on allegations of players engaged in any form or fashion of domestic violence.
Well, Mike, we clearly know that optics are a big deal in the NFL. And it stinks that we have to talk about the gravity of things like domestic violence, but then try to fashion it into a sports talk discussion about how many games maybe a player is suspended or whether it's the commissioner's exempt list. With that said, I saw the headline on the New York Post this morning about this case and the grisly details involved in the police report. And that's when the NFL tends to really react to these things, no?
It's all a PR tool. And for most employers, and I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, let's just put this in the proper context. For most employers in the United States of America, anything you do away from work does not matter to your employment relationship as long as you can show up for work. And when I used to practice law, I would advise companies from time to time.
So I have a question. Do you agree with that? Is that true, really?
Which part?
I mean, so he makes the statement that like the NFL is different in that there's code of conduct stuff that like what you do when you leave your workplace, you know what I mean, in the NFL impacts directly what you can do at work. But in most jobs, he's saying that's not the case, that whatever you do outside of work, as long as you show up to work, you can still keep your job. I don't think that's necessarily true.
No, I would say it's not true for the most part, because most places of employment have the ability to discharge an employee.
Yeah.
based on potential damage to their reputation and those type of things. And then if, charges are dismissed or something, there are there's sort of ways to remedy that. But ultimately, there are plenty of places that would either fire you outright and say, figure it out on your own, or put you on essentially what amounts to be unpaid leave until you are squared away one way or the other. And then, you get into other situations where, like, if you were to, let's say it was drugs and alcohol, for example, you don't necessarily have to be drunk or high at work to potentially be in a situation where they might say, hey, you need to sort of get into some type of program that we're willing to pay for, or you need to go. You essentially resign at that point. Like,
yeah,
I think in that sense, I think Florio was talking from to what feels to me like a place of privilege. In other words, if Mike Florio ran into that issue, type of issue, maybe Mike Florio's job is not impacted, other than whatever potential damage might be done to his own brand. But yeah, there are any number of places that would immediately be like, yeah, we're not doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I know like places I've worked that do background checks on existing employees like every couple of years. Like, it's not like you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that anywhere you go, it's probably different across a number of jobs, but I wouldn't make a broad statement like that. Like, the NFL is the only place where what you do outside of work impacts your job. I think you can lose your job for any number of reasons.
Yeah, too broad of a brush for that.
Yes.
There's certainly incidents. There's certainly industries where that is true. I just think there are plenty of people who listen to that and go, if I was arrested and charged with this, I'd have no job on Monday. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think maybe the point he's trying to make is like, because there's no celebrity, like, your job might not find out necessarily.
That part might be true. But yeah, I mean, the public element certainly plays a role, but if a job finds out, person X got arrested by word of mouth, and they look into it, and then they go, oh, I mean, so I think he misses the mark with the way he's trying to describe that.
Agreed.
I'm on the things that were okay and not okay to consider when deciding whether or not to keep someone. And for the NFL, that's gone out the window because there's collective bargaining, and the union and the league have agreed that for certain things, the personal conduct policy comes into play, even if it is completely unrelated to anything the player ever does at work. He's still going to be held responsible. Think about it. He's not working off season. He's not even signed to a contract yet. He's subject to this policy. That's the way the NFL does it. And it's all a product of PR because of the outcry from the fans, from the customers. If you have guys who are doing things they shouldn't be doing, and the NFL imposes no punishment upon them. That's where it all comes from. It's all PR driven. It's case by case. But one thing we've seen, when domestic violence is involved, the NFL is far more likely to take action, and maybe swift action, including putting him on paid leave right after he signs his contract.
So regardless of the legal outcome of this, because, last year this went on with Mike Hall, who was another second-round draft pick of the Browns. Legally, there wasn't very much of it, but he was still suspended for a time, and it basically, with the injury at the end of the season, became a lost season. Am I to assume as much with Quinshon Judkins here with this Browns football team?
Well, here's the timeline with Mike Hall. The incident happened on August 12. He was arrested on August 13. By the 26th, he was placed on paid leave. And when you're placed on paid leave, you stay on paid leave until the case is resolved and until the subsequent NFL personal conduct policy case is resolved. So that creates a very real incentive for the player to resolve the criminal case ASAP and then pivot around and take whatever punishment the NFL proposes and get back on the field. And that's what happened with Hall. He pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct. He ended up being suspended, I think, 5 games. Mm-hmm. And he got credit for the 4 that he missed while he was on paid leave. So,
okay. Question. Commissioner's exempt. When they say paid leave, they're talking about the commissioner's exempt list, right?
Yes.
Pretty sure. Yeah. So the commissioner's exempt list is NFL's paid leave. If Judkins is put on the commissioner's exempt list, like Mike Hall, he couldn't practice when he's on the commissioner's exempt list. He has to go away at that point, right?
Yes.
You're on leave.
Yes.
Right. So remind me, last year he wasn't in camp, right? After that happened then?
No, he practiced for a minute. I mean, truth be told, the Browns made up an injury for him initially, and then to sort of hide him, and then he was back at practice after like a day or two. And then, again, he laid out the timeline 2 weeks later that is when they put him on the list. But up until that point, he was in the building doing everything because the team has to at that point. He is a functioning member of your team at that point.
Yeah. If he's not put on the exempt list, he can practice. He should report on Friday, right? Or
yes, everything suggests he's going to be there on Friday.
And then at that point, what do you do if you're the Browns?
So this is where things get weird. First, the contract. There is a glut of second-round picks that have not signed, and currently the Chargers' second-round pick, last I checked, has not signed.
All of them except for two. Higgins signed, and then Schlesinger signed. And now people are getting this confused. They're like, why? I don't understand why they're doing this. Isn't there a slotted pay scale? Yes, there's a slotted pay scale, but the slot, they're all asking for fully guaranteed contracts now. So like when Higgins took his fully guaranteed one pick after Carson, Schlesinger then got it, right? There's no point, you know what I mean? So they're all kind of waiting on, what's his name, Amonwari now, the safety from South Carolina. Like if he gets fully guaranteed, then the next guy's going to want it. So they're all kind of waiting for these dominoes to fall. If he doesn't get a fully guaranteed deal at his, salary slot, then the dominoes will probably fall the other way.
Right. So then the sticking point becomes, okay, he signs and his contract's fully guaranteed. Oh, wait a minute. He just voided all his guarantees. Is the agent going to advise the client to sign that contract? Difficult to say. He may try to argue and say, well, I want some stipulation that sort of allows him to recoup that guarantee somehow. I don't know how you do that, which is why I kind of think this is going to be a painless signing, but it's going to be, a pain in the butt to the other teams around that pick, namely 34 and 35 at that point. But nevertheless, I mean, that's sort of the thing is like on one hand, it could be really smooth that first and foremost, Judkins wants to sign that deal as fast as possible because he wants to make sure there's something there. And then two, if he sort of screwed potentially on the guarantee, but obviously this all depends on the outcome of the case. If Judkins that's the other part about this. Let's say Judkins is determined to prove his innocence and says, I didn't do this and this, that, and the other. That may be a reason for him to then not sign his contract because he wants to prove his innocence, have this charge dismissed, and then sign for his fully guaranteed contract. Now, here's the problem, which is another wrinkle on this. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the victim in this case recants and says, this didn't happen. Some random assailant came by and hit me, or I ran into a door, whatever thing no one's going to believe, and says they refuse to press charges or whatever. And ultimately those charges are dropped. The NFL can still step in and suspend it. I mean, ultimately,
that's what I was going to say.
That is more indicative of what happened with Hall than anything else. He didn't get suspended what amounted to be a total of 5 games for disorderly conduct. He got
No.
suspended because the NFL did their investigation and didn't like what they found. And even in his case, he was sort of left in limbo for a while because they just put him on the exempt list, didn't give him an answer until they waited till all these things were done, and then basically said, okay, one more week and then you're back in. It just happened to add up to that. You think, obviously, everything's going to depend on how Judkins handles the situation. If he goes in and pleads guilty or pleads down or whatever to sort of do what Florio's talking about and basically be as compliant as possible in hopes that, one, it allows him to get signed. Two, then he prays that the NFL is going to be more lenient on suspension if he was doing everything possible to sort of own up to this whole thing. And if the NFL sitting there going, well, we'll give him 3 or 4 games as opposed to 5 or 6 because he was contrite and all these other things. There's a whole lot of dynamics in play. And unfortunately, because of what Florio laid out, there's no hard and fast rule on this. There's no and there can't be. This is why there can't be, because of all these things I'm laying out. For example, with Hall, disorderly conduct is not domestic violence. The NFL did their own investigation, came up with their own conclusion. Deshaun Watson, nothing was
never found guilty
it was all civil stuff. It wasn't criminal court. Yet he was suspended for
and all those cases were settled.
Right. And he still got suspended for 11 games. So much of this is going to depend on where Judkins and his now lawyer and agent think this can go, what the Browns are telling him, where they think this can go. But now there's all these extra variables that could change how this plays out if the NFL wants to put him on leave. But so I would sort of dispute the idea that Mike Hall's season was a lost one. But nevertheless, I understand what Ken Carmen's saying. You lost so much time between injury and suspension. But he was there for the beginning of training camp. If Judkins is not, how far back is he setting himself? Even if he's, let's say for the sake of argument that he is innocent and he's fighting for his own innocence here, is he going to then, there's a reverse incentive for him to sort of he's hurting himself by fighting for his innocence, because then he's theoretically, there's reason for him to then hold out. So this is what makes this whole thing so complicated. The NFL, to Florio's point, is very, the incentives are there to be super compliant. They are not there to sort of have a player fight for their innocence, regardless of if they are or not. And Judkins can sort of hurt himself while trying to help himself from that standpoint. It's very unpleasant in every sort of aspect.
Yeah, the fighting of it really just slows the process down, to his point, right? And potentially slows your path back to the field down, ultimately hurting you more. And to your point, and Florio's point, they don't care what the courts say. The NFL is going to rule how they rule. And ultimately that is, that's why I tend to think at this point, we're talking minimum, like you said, if he's contrite and does all these things, and I hate to speculate, but bare minimum of 4. I mean, I got to think at least.
Even though the NFL
Probably
never
6.
intended this way, there is, in some sort of grotesque way, there is some decency in how they handle this, because if you run into these situations and as Florio laid out, let's say the girlfriend or whatever, however she wants to describe herself at this point, doesn't want to hurt him because it will hurt him financially, and therefore is going to recant for that reason. The thought process, doing it fully knowing he did the deed. In some ways, the NFL is more, I guess, just in the sense that they're not willing to accept of whether it's pressure from the player to get the victim to not do it, or whatever, that they're willing to go in and investigate and find out what they believe happened. Now, that's not an infallible process, but it does suggest that they're willing to at least try to eliminate as much of the threat, the potential for threats, and like something awful happening to this person beyond what has already happened, for the sake of ensuring that they get the max of their contract.
They don't need a cooperating witness, right? The NFL doesn't need the cooperating witness to press charges or do whatever. They're just going to do what they see just.
Right. Now, they would really prefer to have a cooperating witness. But yeah, I mean, and the other part of that is she could cooperate with the police and say, I don't want to deal with the NFL. Because, if we go back to the Deshaun Watson example, there were people who accusers of Deshaun Watson who said the NFL was intrusive and all these other things that they thought that process was an uncomfortable one and ultimately harmful to them. So that part is also its own sort of element to this.
Fumble makes a comment here that I think is worth showing. The NFL doesn't want you to fight it because it keeps it in the news. They want it gone as quick as possible. Do you believe that to be true?
For the most part, yes. How they also want to be seen as, I mean, it keeps it in the news that they're suspended, but they also like the idea of, in some small way, and I emphasize very small, that they're trying to do something about it. The problem is that the numbers are not in their favor. It's not going in a good direction from that standpoint.
He also says, after reading the report, a good defense lawyer should be able to rip it apart. The piece that could be damaging to him, the picture she took. Ultimately, the time frame, Pete, initially made it seem like it was kind of screwy, but the more details that have come out, the more I think he's in trouble here.
Well, listen, I'm not going to police how victims handle reporting domestic violence because there are too many variables at play here. She may have not been sure of what she wanted to do initially.
She got counsel from her family.
She may have been very worried for her own personal safety. There are any number of reasons why somebody might delay. I think it's a very dangerous proposition to say, and I understand that will. I've already seen it on Twitter and stuff where people have suggested, well, she's gold digging this, that, and the other. I think that's a very risky proposition to try to legislate how a victim of domestic violence or violence from that area of life where you're going to tell them how to be victims. That's grossly unfair in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on this because I think we get to some of those details here.
There is strategically a reason to get this done the moment you're put on paid leave. Because if you just let the legal system play out while you're on paid leave, you may miss the whole season. Because unless you have an incentive to try to get your case wrapped up, and being on paid leave gives you that incentive, this thing could just linger and linger and linger. So that's how it could go for Judkins. We don't know what the NFL is going to do. They'll do their own investigation. They'll make a decision on whether or not they're going to put them on paid leave. They won't necessarily even announce that they're not doing it.
So, as much as I just explained why the NFL's process is in some ways helpful, this is where it's extremely harmful to someone who's trying to report domestic violence, because now the victim might want to recant their statement to then speed up the process so that the NFL can decide their punishment faster and that they can stop,
Sure.
If he's going to be out for 4 games, 6 games, whatever, then they can get out of the way and do that. Whereas if this becomes a lengthy court thing, and I have no reason to believe this would be, but just as an example, he's saying it could go on for the whole season. Yeah, it could. So in that sense, now it's saying to the victim, you have more reason to drop charges and not cooperate with police just so you can get this thing over with, because you want to get on with your life and you want the player
him
to
to be
like
able
not
to
be harmed
play.
as much and be able to move like that's that's the part that makes the NFL's process very, in some ways you could say noble, and in this way really bad for victims of assault in this case.
Yeah, it also depends on the context of the situation too, very much on who the accuser is. Like in this case, it feels like these two have known each other for a long time. I don't know that to be a fact, but like the reports are that she sought counsel with her family before even turning herself, making this charge. Like she didn't want to harm him. Whereas in other instances, more of like the Watson case, where these women are just a one-off encounter. They don't care. They don't have anything invested in his personal interest in the long-term future, right? Whereas, like, that somebody else could care about this person or a long-term friendship, that they actually care about the person. Where the two things, we're talking about two very different accusers.
Right. Exactly.
But if they do it, he'll be gone and he'll be back once that case is resolved, and presumably once he works out some sort of a deal with the NFL on whatever his punishment will be under the personal conduct policy.
Boy, you said something interesting there about the incentive structure that could be there for the player in these situations to plead, to get something over with sooner. Do prosecutors tend to use that as leverage when they have high-profile cases such as this?
Prosecutors use anything that they have. And if there's a way to get Quinshon Judkins to plead guilty to something and wrap up the case and move on, and they know he's going to receive a punishment within the confines of his employment, that becomes part of what is negotiated. Now, again, Mike Hall pleaded guilty at the end of the day to disorderly conduct, and he allegedly put a gun to his girlfriend/fiance's head. So, you may get some cooperation.
Now, that's what was recanted, though.
There were a lot of things recanted, but yes, that was the biggest element that both sides said was not true.
And if you're willing to face the music and get this done quickly, but I think the prosecutors, if you're going to be fair, you recognize this guy's going to have a hell of a lot greater consequence within the confines of his employment than he's going to have as a first-time offender under the legal system.
True.
Mike Florio joining us from Pro Football Talk and NBC Sports. What happens with the contract negotiation now? He's one of many, many, many second rounders who haven't signed yet. They wanted guaranteed money, and now this is a major wrench thrown in here, is it not?
Yeah, and here's the broader look at what's going on in round two. You've never had fully guaranteed contracts in the second round of the draft. This year, the Texans stepped out of line and gave Jaden Higgins a fully guaranteed contract at the second pick in round two. That bracketed the Browns and forced them to do a fully guaranteed contract with Carson Schwessinger, the first pick in round two. Everyone after that, and the next guy up is Nick Emenwari of the Seahawks, then Judkins, the fourth pick in round two. It isn't just all of them trying to get fully guaranteed contracts. There's a percentage that each guy gets fully guaranteed, and when you jack the top two all the way up to 100, the rest of them are going to see an increase, and you really don't know what the right increase is until the guy's in front.
God, if you could, of all situations, to have this add another layer to the entire thing, right? Like on top of that, he's number 34. Right, and just adds another layer to all the players in the second round that are hoping that they can hold out for guaranteed money as long as possible, and now he has no leverage anymore, right? So it's just it just makes a mess of it more, you know what I mean?
Yes, although I do think those second round picks are going to sign very fast. It's just going to be sort of a cascade effect.
Yeah, I think once one falls, though, they all will.
They'll just go right down the line.
Yeah. But until one doesn't get a fully guaranteed deal, then they'll probably.
So you're the Chargers, and you're sitting there with Trey Harris, and you've already started camp, and now he's waiting on all these other guys to sign.
Yeah, you can't expect Judkins to hold out on that anymore. So probably probably ends the negotiation for this year at pick 34. Yeah.
Of you do their deals. There's a thought around the league that Judkins is going to be the one to take less than 100 because of this arrest. And that's going to set the ceiling for the fifth guy in round 2, which sets the ceiling for the sixth guy in round 2. And they're just going to fall like dominoes all the way down to the bottom of the round. By the bottom of the round last year, it was like 52% of the deal was fully guaranteed. So again, these guys aren't going to get 100% guarantee. It's just the fact that the top 2 got 100%. It screws up everything else. But there's a belief that Judkins is going to be the one to get the deal done because of what happened. And then the agents will just blame it on Judkins as they cave at lower and lower percentages as we get deeper and deeper into the round.
Mike Florio, you've done terrific work along with Pablo Torre on the collusion case that is now starting to ruffle some feathers, even more so around the NFL, and in particular with the Players Union, where it doesn't seem like everybody was kept apprised of the collusion case. And for those that don't know, it all really starts with the guaranteed contract that Jimmy Haslam and the Browns gave to Deshaun Watson and how that was greeted by owners around the league. So what's the latest development with all this, in particular the CBA, the Players Union?
And really, it comes from the league. It all started with the league because they were able to twice fend off efforts by the NFL Players Association to make fully guaranteed contracts for all players part of the collective bargaining agreement. So 2011, 2020, the NFL pushed back on that. When the Browns turn around and give Deshaun Watson 5-year fully guaranteed.
All right. We've covered this prior to now. So that was the major part of that interview that we wanted to cover. You know, these things, you know, when this happens, the first thing is like, okay, you want to wait, right? Like you don't want to react. You don't want, you know, say something out of pocket because you don't know all the facts, right? And you want all the facts to come forward and come to the forefront, and then, you know, we can react to these things. But this seemingly at this point, with the information that we have, Pete, I would be surprised if he got anything less than 6 for at best.
I'm not going to speculate on the number. But I'm going to say at this point, I have every reason to believe he's going to be suspended. Yeah. Pending something unexpected coming out of this investigation or some, you know, exculpatory evidence that sort of proves that this was made up. I think he's ultimately going to have to plead to something, and the NFL is going to hit him with a suspension. Beyond that, you know, again, the numbers can be arbitrary. The NFL's inclination is to hit hard and then potentially revise the number down. But nevertheless, I'd be stunned if we're not, you know, if the Browns have Quinshon Judkins against the Bengals.
How do the Browns handle this then? So, you know, if he reports on Friday, I guess we don't really know how the NFL is going to handle it with their negotiation. They could put him on the commissioner's exempt list at some point, like they did Mike Hall last year, right? But until then, do you expect him to practice? Yes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If whether or not, I mean, individual drills and all that stuff's an obvious, meetings, all that stuff. Because here's the thing, you know, if you're with football and team sports in general, all these organizations want to basically, if they could, keep track of their players all year round. So they're going to give them stuff to do. It's really going to be a question of how do they handle him in terms of team reps and stuff like that? Are they going to put him right in there with the role they were sort of planning on him, which is being the starting running back, being the top guy? Or are they going to sort of emphasize what I expect would be Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson, and sort of Quinshon Judkins is going to be the third guy and get fewer reps? I mean, there's still plenty of reps at running back. It's not like they're going to run out. But are they going to are the Browns going to approach this like we expect he's going to be gone, so we're going to do everything else to get ready for the season. Difficult to say. They may mix it up. I mean, from that position, there's a good amount of time. There's going to be reason to get all these guys reps with the one. There were going to be reasons to get all these guys reps with the ones. So it's not, if there's a position like quarterback or even wide receiver or tight end or something like that, offensive line, things that have more of a pecking order, it would be sort of more pronounced in how they're handling it. But running back, unless they go into practice and they just say, here, you're the first dude at all the stuff, I think it's going to be more in line with they're going to focus on the other guys initially, if for no other reason, for appearance sake.
And then you have to prepare to be without him, right?
Yes, but I also think there's an optic element to this. I don't think they want him to put him right back in as the feature back.
Sure.
Unless, crazier things have happened. Maybe they believe that he's innocent, but I even if they do, I think there's an optics element which is going to suggest, we want him to practice, we want him to do this other thing, but he's going to be either the last guy or whatever for the time being and sort of figure it out from there.
So ultimately then Browns probably without him for some amount of time. We don't know. We won't put a number on it. We don't, who knows, but and you said, they ultimately get Sampson and
Ford
going there. What do you do? I mean, does Pierre, I hate the idea of Pierre Strong being running back 3 on this team. Do you bring another body in? I mean, you have to plan to be without him for 3 weeks, and I would hate for them to have to play Pierre Strong.
I think the most likely scenario is they'll roll with what they have for the time being, and obviously that's going to be a heavy focus on Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. I'll give a very long answer to this. I think ultimately the question is going to be, how do they handle Dylan Sampson? My theory of the case, and I have every reason to believe this, is that the Browns were planning to use Dylan Sampson as a running back and other things.
Yeah.
Does the Judkins pending suspension, if that's what's going to happen, change that and they're going to put him in the backfield exclusively? I doubt it. I still think they're going to want to put him in space. He's still 5'8", 200 pounds and not somebody you want to have pass block. Jerome Ford has the capability to do some of those things. He also has more size. So I think in that scenario, Jerome Ford largely just replaces Quinshon Judkins. It's just that the proportion might slide a little bit more to Sampson getting more touches out of the backfield.
Yeah.
At that point, I think the Browns will roll with what they have, wait to see what happens at cut down or sometime at that point, or a guy we don't want for a guy you don't want trade. But I think in terms of talent, I think they're most likely going to benefit from waiting to see what other teams sort of let go and adding from there. And then you can put Pierre Strong in the practice squad or whatever that guy is. Pierre Strong's the stand-in for whatever you think that guy is.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I would think they would start to kind of keep their eye on potential cuts and things like that, right? I mean, if they weren't already, which they probably already were, I would think that would be something that they would begin to do, as you mentioned, handling it at cut downs. You're watching The React. That's P. Smith. My name is Brad Ward. We always appreciate you tuning in to the OBR streaming network as you are tonight. If you like and enjoy the programming that you get here, get over to the OBR.com, become a VIP subscriber, so that you can get into the best Browns community going, exclusive access to our VIP forums, insider scoops in Insider Central, for Lane Adkins insider stuff that Pete writes so eloquently out for all of our insiders to read, is worth the price of admission alone. So make sure you do that. You also get access to all of 247 Sports, inside transfer portal information, plus a Paramount Plus subscription, which I say is worth the price of admission right there. If you like Landman and Mayor of what is it? Mayor of Kingstown. Really good shows there with a free Showtime membership after 1 month. So do all of that over at theobr.com for sure. It's camp reports, all of it. All of it. Become a member today. Link is in the description below to take you right there to the page. Hit like, slap that sub button while you're at it. This is the React. So I did, speaking of cut downs, I did write an article on UDFAs, Pete, and kind of discovered the guy that writes for Wide Left's kind of breakdown on guaranteed money and combining that with the consensus draft, where people end up on the consensus draft board, and that putting them together can predict a percentage or chance that these guys make the team as UDFAs. The Browns have 3 guys that were pretty high on that list in McMillan, Huntington, and I didn't realize it, but Lamarian James actually has a decent amount of guaranteed money on his deal. Thoughts on those 3 guys, and being UDFAs and the chance that, and I kind of alluded to it in the article, like the Browns probably need to have an eye on the future at corner, things like that. Like, did they stumble over a Khalif Halassi like they did a couple years ago that they like in the preseason, or see somebody else cut and try to get on this roster?
Yeah, Arif Hassan does really good work over there. He's building a really impressive brand at Wide Left with a bunch of different Raiders. He does really good, thorough stuff. Listen, you're in my wheelhouse with Aiden Huntington. That's my dude.
I know. And McMillan, right?
Yes, those are the 2 I immediately jumped out and said those are the 2 likeliest to make the roster. So it's, the Browns have gotten in this habit of sort of not really creating, but having holes that undrafted free agents can sort of walk right into with a reasonable chance to make the roster. And ultimately, if you're an undrafted free agent rookie or you're an agent, that's what you're looking for. So they set themselves well to recruit these guys, and then they figure out guys that they feel fit them. Aiden Huntington, to me, is a Jim Schwartz dude in terms of just the way he wants to play. Inside-outside versatility, athletic freak, really impressive attacking. McMillan, the safety out of Pitt. When I watched him in preparation for the draft stuff, and then after that, we found, sort of looking around, super productive. I think he can play a little bit of combo safety. I didn't really see something that jumped out to me as some overwhelming trait, but I just felt like he was Mr. All-Around solid guy. And weirdly enough, in a lot of ways, that's what Ronnie Hickman was. I thought Ronnie Hickman was really good playing forward and scraping downhill and making plays from that stand. I had real questions about his ability to sort of play back, not play backward, moving backward. And to this point in his career, for the most part, other than the playoff game against the Texans, he's been very good about making sure he doesn't have to, by keeping everything in front, having enough depth and all those other things. So those are 2 spots that make a ton of sense. And then DB, you cannot have enough corners. You are always on the lookout in corners, and corners one of those positions where you seem to be able to find guys like this.
Yeah.
At a hugely valuable position where you want 4 and 5 and 6 guys deep. You're going to keep taking shots. Obviously, they've got this kid. They've got Dom Jones, who I hope, for his sake, is better when the pads come on, because he's a full-on press corner. And so you're going to keep pulling and pulling and pulling. And yes, you mentioned Khalif Halassi, but if you get lucky with one of these guys and you get, a year or 3 years out of one of these, it's a hugely impactful position, special teams, all the various areas they can sort of benefit you at a position where it's just adding to your roster. Now, I think the guarantees matter So insofar as getting a sense of what the Browns are looking at, I'm still going to look at the player ultimately, which is why I am very high on Huntington and McMillan to make this roster, and I'm not as high on the corner, any of the corners. I can see where it sort of might.
Oh, you froze up there. Sorry. Repeat that last part.
Where did I get cut off?
Where you were saying that at the corner position where it's not as much Lamarian James, but any of
I mean
they have for example, they have Nick Needham, they have Anthony Kendall, and that these guys can be useful for a year or two because they can play special teams and whatnot.
Yeah, I think they're just taking a whole lot of swings, which again I applaud that. That idea. I mean, people are complain about it with the quarterback position. Oh my God, 4 quarterbacks, and I get all the reasons why. But more swings, if you get lucky on one of them for a year, you're going to be happy about it. And we're sitting there, praising the Browns for finding a player that can help you for a year. That becomes one of these sort of, Maurice Hurst is a completely different. He's a veteran, but nevertheless, he was lightning in a bottle for a year that was really good for a defense. So if you find somebody to give you that, I'll use a guy that the Steelers got, who I liked for the Browns, was the kid out of West Virginia, Beanie, whatever his name was.
Bishop.
Beanie Bishop, who I really liked coming to college. Just the problem was he was old. And he's coming for the Steelers and been really good for exactly what they needed him to do. So you get lucky on one of those guys, it's just a huge value for you.
I think the interesting thing about corner too is, like you said, it's kind of an easier position to find guys. I think part of that is like each coach and like based on your scheme, like they all are kind of looking for something specific. Like they probably envision like a certain corner with the exact nuances to their game that they want for their system. And that may, be slightly different than even somebody that runs the same scheme across the league. So players slip through the cracks and kind of find potentially their way to a roster that they fit.
It allows you to be very specific. If you have a specific, like Dom Jones, very specific in the same way Khalif Halassi was.
Yeah.
Long, super short area quickness, but you just don't have a lot of long speed. Okay, well, we're going to give you this one thing to do. If it can work, great. That if it's hot, premium agility that sort of that allows you to be able to play the slot, great. That you find those guys who can sort of give you that ability. And I would say the same, even though the Browns took a very different approach with their undrafted receivers. My fight with Lance Riesland, that Cade McDonald and Luke Flourier, they're very specific. They're very specifically slot receivers that have this one specific skill of try to get open underneath and then create yards from after the catch and those type of things. Whereas a guy like Keyshawn Johnson is more of a big-bodied X who just happens to be short. So it allows you to be specific in terms of what you're looking for and present a vision to those players. We're saying we want you to be exactly who you are. We're going to put you in the position to potentially be the best version of yourself. And if you're successful, you're going to do that for us, and we're going to pay, potentially give you a longer term contract for it.
Very good. All right. So our next aspect of the show tonight, there was really hard to find anything video-wise that wasn't Quinshawn Judkins based. So we'll try our best. But this article, 12 last-minute NFL trades we expect before training camp starts. Pete, which was introduced in our Slack today, but it is definitely worth discussing. The first one on here, Kirk Cousins to the Browns. After tearing his Achilles in 2023, Cousins bounced back with Atlanta in 2024, completed 68.4% of his passes. Cleveland had uncertainty under center. Head coach Kevin Stefanski knows Cousins well from their time in Minnesota. Blah, 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 blah. Why in God's name is this coming up again? They have 4 quarterbacks in camp already.
Yeah, there's a really simple reason why this is coming up. The QB series on Netflix. Kirk Cousins is one of the people featured. So it's, if you're somebody, you write this type of stuff for a website, you're going to instantly try to get everybody who's, because Kirk Cousins was really popular on the last season. People, they're trying to cash in on the people who are excited about Kirk Cousins again because of how he comes off on that show, which is really well, and go, oh, okay, there's Kirk, the potential for Kirk Cousins news. I want to know about him. Is that realistic? Absolutely not. The Browns have too many, already by most accounts, too many quarterbacks. They certainly don't want to deal with Kirk Cousins' contract mess of the $27 million. And here's the sad reality is once Aaron Rodgers, even before he signed, it was sort of understood that the Steelers were going to sign him. Nobody talked about Kirk Cousins anymore. And, there was this moment in time where, Kirk Cousins is this big piece that's gonna fall. It was either going to be the Browns or the Steelers and all that. And then the second the Browns got Flacco and the Steelers were essentially committed, nobody talking about Kirk Cousins anymore. And this thing, now the Falcons have to sit there and sort of eat this, the $40 million whole hog. Now, could an injury occur that prompts a move and somebody wants a veteran quarterback and Kirk Cousins looks healthier and gets better, and maybe he's got, God, I hope he's not playing in the preseason, but nevertheless, if he is, then it looks good enough that somebody gets desperate and says, okay, well, we'll make a trade. I mean, that would bail the Falcons out, but there's no reason for the Browns to consider this in any shape or form. And the reality is the Judkins news makes it even less likely, because if you think he's going to get suspended, I'm sitting here going, oh man, the Bengals look beatable. And then you sit here and go, well, we don't have Judkins. Like the Browns have so little room for error. You're sitting there going, it feels defeating in some ways that they just don't have that many options. So that makes the prospect of adding Cousins even less attractive.
I don't the Judkins thing sucks, right? And it really does. And the fact that he's not going to, I get that it's defeating, but it's more defeating for me, like in that, God, again, with the same crap. But like, I didn't think Judkins was going to go out and beat the Bengals. I mean, I think running backs in the NFL, I think you can find somebody, a combination of Sampson and Ford could be fine. It's more about the offensive line for me.
I agree with you, but in a world where we're sitting here, let's say it's Joe Flacco, and you've got questions at wide receiver, and you've got questions at all these other positions, and you're sitting here going, man, how do we find weapons? Like, the Browns were counting on Judkins. The Browns were marketing Judkins as the answer to he was the new puppy to replace the old puppy or the old dog that was getting worn and injured and everything else, and Nick Chubb. And they leaned into it. They leaned into him being sort of the answer to that. And not having him, this 6 foot, 5'11", 225-pound power back with incredible athletic gifts, felt like it gave you a huge advantage, especially for a Cincinnati Bengals team that is dealing with, Joe Burrow called it a distraction himself with Trey Hendrickson, and then you've got the Shamar Stewart stuff, and they, their defense sucked last year, and so that, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say they can't win, but it certainly would have been easier. You'd like to think if Judkins is 36th overall pick good, that it would have given them a sizable advantage. I mean, he was to be certainly Dylan Sampson was supposed to be a factor and this stuff, but Quinshon Judkins in a lot of ways was going to be the face of your offense, which is, by the way, another reason why this thing is so bad for all involved, because Mike Hall's situation was awful too. But, Mike Hall is a defensive tackle and he's in a position that's rotating and not everybody sees his face. Even they both played at Ohio State, but if you were mildly if you paid any attention to college football, chances are you knew who Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson, and the quarterback at Ohio State were. You may not have known who Mike Hall was, and you probably didn't know who Tyleik Williams was. And Tyleik Williams was picked in this year's draft before any of those other three. So, I mean, that's sort of the thing is like, it's not just a player being arrested for domestic abuse in this case. It's a high-profile, recognizable player on a name everybody knows. It's not as forgettable as somebody else doing it, and that part of it has to be particularly daunting for Jimmy Haslam, his ownership. But certainly, the other added element to this is like they're counting on this rookie class to be productive, and I think Judkins more than anyone was supposed to be sort of that guy, and not having him certainly is frustrating. So if you whether we can prove it or not, let's say you feel like Judkins would have been the difference in winning the first game of the season if it's close or whatever. That changes the dynamic of the season. And you look at last year, had they beaten the Raiders, had they beaten the Giants or one of the other crappy teams, they're playing meaningful football much longer in the season. Whereas if you lose one of these games, it's particularly early with the way this team is constructed, if you could win one of these games, it gets some juice going. It gets you feeling like you can compete. If you're suddenly 0-4 or whatever, or it's the difference between 1-3 and 2-2, it just changes the complexion of the season. And there's more people going, let's just put the rookies in. Let's just go young guys. Forget Joe Flacco. This is a waste of time. And let's just sort of play it out. And once if the rookies can't do it, then I'm looking at the rookie quarterbacks in next year's class. Like that's where I think that game of inches does matter.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. All right. So no need for Kirko here. Trade scenario number 2, Kayvon Thibodeau to the Titans. Thibodeau showed he could be a dominant edge with 11.5 sacks in 23 in a Pro Bowl nod, but the Giants now have Brian Burns and your guy Abdul Carter off the edge, which leaves Thibodeau's role in question. Tennessee, however, needs a top-tier pass rusher to balance its young defense, I think they mean to say.
Right this second, Kayvon Thibodeau is Cam Wembley. He had the great rookie year and then was decidedly not as good his second year. In order for this to happen, the Titans are going to have to pay a premium because the Giants are very comfortable keeping those 3 edge rushers in tow. They've already messed around and shown on tape with their camp stuff, having all those guys on the field at
all
once.
3. Yeah.
And just terrorizing and trying to get as much as possible. It is far more real. And the Titans have no edge rushers. I have no idea who plays defensive end for that team anymore. You might be on that team. I don't know. But it's far more likely that the Giants would go into the trade deadline and then ship him to somebody that's willing to pay handsomely to get him on their team than to just make a deal. The Titans would have to pay way more than I think they're prepared to pay. I think the Titans I don't know that they're comfortable with how bad they're going to be this year. And maybe they'll surprise. Maybe Cam Ward will carry them, but that roster is awful. I think it's going to be a real challenge. I think they are more likely to just sort of roll with it, not give up assets, and just sort of build from there. And if a great opportunity presents itself, then they'll take advantage. But right this second, the Giants are going to want real assets for Kayvon Thibodeau.
Drew in Brick City says, can Shamar Stewart really go back to college? It's circulating, Pete.
He can go hang out all he wants. He can take courses. There's no rule against going to college. But no, he cannot play on Texas A&M's football team, but he can work out and do his stuff like that. But the threat that he's trying to put out there, and I don't know how real it is that he's potentially willing to just take classes this year and then reclassify into next year's draft. He won't be able to play at all this year and just wait and then be in the draft next year. Obviously try to be in physical tip-top shape, work with private coaches, whatever, and then just be back in the draft. That is the leverage they are trying to create as they continue to argue this. But he can go hang out at Texas A&M, but no, he cannot play for Texas A&M.
Is he out of eligibility? He's not out of eligibility.
But he's declared himself a professional. He's done.
Wasn't it a couple years ago that you could declare for the draft and then go back if you never hired an agent?
Yes, that window lasts 1 week. So he's far.
I didn't know.
Far out there.
I didn't know.
You already got. Well, here's the other. I mean, obviously there used to be a harder and faster rule with this, which is simple. You hired an agent, you were done. It's a little bit. It's a little bit more difficult than that, but I think he's still screwed on that in terms of.
Well, NIL.
And the other part is Texas A&M has moved on. Like Texas A&M, what is he going to walk on? I don't think he wants to pay his own way. But no, he's done. This is all.
I'm sure they could come up with some cash.
Oh, Texas A&M, any Texas school would happily pay up with oil money. But nevertheless, this is a ploy to try to get a deal done. I still think a deal will eventually get done. I just think the Bengals will handle this as poorly as possible and make this as awful as possible. Yes, and make this as awful as possible on all fronts and waste potentially a good chunk of this kid's training camp and then, diminish his rookie year.
It's terrific. It's the only thing that, can really make us smile right now. It's how bad they're butchering their offseason. On the defensive side, at least. All right. Greg Newsome. Here he is again. He just won't get off these trade lists. Newsome might not start in Cleveland this year. And is heading into the final year of his rookie deal. Not really. He's in his fifth-year option, but yeah, okay. That's the kind of situation Miami loves to exploit. Low cost, high upside. Well, he's not low cost. He's very expensive, so that's incorrect. They get a plug-and-play option for a shaky secondary, and Cleveland gets value now instead of letting him walk next spring, although they don't tell you what they would trade them.
So I don't disagree with the idea that the Dolphins need corner help. Their secondary is terrible.
They are.
And I believe that Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer are working for their jobs this year. I don't think another non-playoff crappy season they're going to survive. I think they will move on. So from that standpoint, there's incentive for them to go get help. Is Greg Newsome the answer they're looking for? I don't know. But from that standpoint, Andrew Berry loves this because now he's got a potential way to get some value as opposed to trying to give away Greg Newsome, which he was never going to do anyway because the Browns can still use him. He can still be a good player. Again, this is a seller's market from this standpoint. Yes, the Browns would like not to be paying Greg Newsome the $13 million, whatever it is for this year. But they're not going to give him away. So the Dolphins are going to have to pay up. I think the Dolphins, at least for the moment, are going to see what they have in terms of in-house options to see if some of those guys can step up. But if they can't, they may get desperate. And a guy like Greg Newsome might be something they're willing to entertain. I just don't think we're there yet.
I think I would have a hard time. I've come around on this more. I would have a hard. I used to. There was a period where I wanted to move Greg because of his contract and whatever else. But with the lack of options on this roster that are proven beyond Denzel Ward after 2025, I think I want to see how this year plays out with both guys, Emerson and Newsome, with the potential that if Emerson doesn't have the bounce back year, which I hope he does, because I hope he's the guy more than Newsome. But if he's not, you can't tell me that you can't get Newsome and kick him outside and have him play outside corner like he did when he was a rookie and him be okay for a year or two more.
Yes, I think the Browns' best course of action is to use those guys in a competition for each other for one contract extension. And it could be zero.
Yep.
They could
Yep.
ultimately come to the conclusion that neither is worth a contract extension. But I think they want to use those two to compete, hopefully get the best guy. If it's, I don't care. I think the Browns would like it to be Martin Emerson, just stylistically.
Yeah, I think so
As
too.
a contrast with Denzel Ward. But if they have Greg Newsome is a phenomenally talented man corner with athletic traits and everything else. He's just got to be more consistent. That you're willing to bet and see if it works out. And to this idea that he could walk for nothing, okay, but like if somebody signs him for a reasonable deal, the Browns are going to seemingly get some compensatory value. And again, this could be a trade deadline move. It wouldn't be the Dolphins at that point, but it could be if the Browns are bad, that they then look to ship him off to somebody who, and again, you might not get the return on investment you want there. It might be more along the lines of the Zadarius Smith type deal, but that you're sort of like willing to take that as you sort of lean into potentially some of these younger options. If there's somebody they're excited about, one of those corners they brought in, or one of the guys they've been drafting over the course of a couple of years, late rounds, then it gives you sort of a place to move him from. But I think, in the same way that I don't think they are ready to just sort of hand the job to Cameron Mitchell, they need him to prove that he can do that guy, or Miles Harden, or whoever it is. So again, reason for the Browns to wait and see how this thing plays out. They could have an injury and be in suddenly a desperate situation as an outside corner. I don't think they're in any rush.
I think if they would have seen more from Cam Mitchell or Miles Harden to this point, they already would have moved him.
Perhaps, but again, he can compete it outside, and they're not going to give him away. They would have wanted a deal. So it's something that was actually something they wanted. So unclear. Okay. It's unclear that they've gotten nearly enough to their liking to actually make that move.
Yeah. All right. Interestingly enough, more Browns. Shelby Harris to the Falcons. Harris isn't a star, they write, but he's a dependable veteran run stopper. That's exactly what Atlanta lacks in the middle. Atlanta's run defense ranked 26th in 2024, and their current interior group needs more experience. Harris would slot in immediately and bring toughness and leadership to a defensive line that needs both.
So the argument here is that the Browns, this is where you get this sort of convoluted defensive line thing, where they're going to roll with Mike Hall, they're going to roll with Juwan Briggs, they're going to roll with Malik Collins, and they feel and Mason Graham, obviously, and then they feel one of the undrafted rookies, most likely, is so good. Let's use Aiden Huntington because he can play inside and out. That then they decide, okay, Shelby Harris, or Alex Wright would factor in that as well because he can play inside outside. They feel so good about that spot that because Shelby Harris is about to be 34, that they're willing to move him. I could see where that happens. What I would have a tough time seeing is them trading him. I think they'd more likely just cut him and let him sort of decide his own future, unless the team that comes calling and says, we want Shelby Harris is so excited about that team that they just go ahead and do the deal that way. But I think given how good Shelby Harris has been for the Browns, how sort of, respected he is by the organization, I think if the Browns came to the conclusion they didn't want to keep Shelby Harris for another year, they would cut him and allow him to sort of make his own decision on how he proceeds with his career. I still, by the way, at this point, I still think he's going to be on this team because he's still a good football player.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I sure hope so. Okay. We're gonna skip over that one and go to this one here. Okay. You yelled at me about including him in a trade list. Treylon Burks to the Raiders.
So the Treylon Burks problem is that Treylon Burks is coming off an ACL tear. So how excited are you going to be if you're the team sort of getting what amounts to be damaged goods? How confident are you going to be in that knee, especially for a player who hasn't really set the world on fire already? What are you going to give up for that? And if it's a conditional pick, okay, I guess. But like, am I getting excited about that? Am I saying, oh, the Raiders are good at wide receiver now that they have Treylon Burks? Absolutely not. I think this is, closer to being in line with Rashad Perryman, who the Browns got as an unrestricted free agent and did some good things for them. But I think that's sort of like the level of investment you're going to make on this. It's either going to be a conditional pick or a player that one team doesn't want that's willing to trade to another team that the other team doesn't want for that player. So this is also the only reason Treylon Burks is on this list is because he's a former first-round pick. If he wasn't, he'd be pretty inconsequential relative to this article.
Okay. The next few are just wide receivers. There's one guy that I am very much interested in here, if I was the Browns, that I had forgotten on my lists up to this point, who I think could be available. But we'll talk about that in a minute. The next guy is Kendrick Bourne. 2, the Eagles. Do the Eagles want anything to do with Kendrick Bourne?
This is a
ACL
this is the thing that
2023.
they were talk about the Eagles last year was, okay, they've got AJ Brown, they've got Devontae Smith, they've got Dallas Goedert, but they don't have a number 3 wide receiver. How are they going to possibly survive? Well, they won the Super Bowl. So yes, they could theoretically want a number 3 receiver. Kendrick Bourne could be that receiver. I could, I'm not going to rule this out. I could totally see them deciding that they like him. I mean, this is what they did last year when they made that trade with Washington to pick up a receiver, and everybody was like, why on earth is Washington doing this? Because they need all the weapons they get for Jaden Daniels. So is there a world where Howie Roseman could pull the trigger on this type of deal? Absolutely. This is, but you could say this about just about any receiver, that the Eagles, if they like the deal, will pull the trigger. That's just sort of how Howie Roseman goes. So like anything you put to the Eagles, there's some level of, okay, I can see it happening because of how often it seems to happen. But ultimately, the Patriots need all the help they can get on offense. So if anybody's worth anything, they need them for Drake May.
Yeah. They already have a ton of receivers. I mean, the Patriots do.
Yeah, they got a pile of guys. It's unclear how many of them are actually worth anything.
Well, I'd take a shit flyer on a few of them. Give me Javon Baker. I'll take him.
I liked him coming out of college. So, but we'll see. We'll see if any of these guys, and they're obviously expecting Drake May to sort of, elevate the talent around him and see which of those guys sort of fits with him. That's the other reason I think this might take some time for the Patriots to decide who they're willing to keep and who they're willing to sort of move on from.
Yeah. All right. I hope this happens so bad. Alan Lazard to the Steelers. Hilarious. Please send him there.
This is the cost of doing business with Aaron Rodgers. You have to take his crappy friends. So Alan Lazard has to go live on the Steelers, sleep on the Steelers couch for probably a 7th round pick. Them's the rules. Now,
311 yards last year.
That being said, the Steelers, unfortunately, do have need a wide receiver. So there will be Steelers fans who are willing to talk themselves into Alan Lazard for that reason. But he's basically yet another tight end in terms of his size and stature on that team. But yeah, this is the cost of Aaron Rodgers. You have to take his buddies.
All right. Here's the one. This should say John Mechie to the Browns, but it says to the Bengals instead. Why John Mechie III would be beautiful fit here in Cleveland, don't you think?
The problem is that the Texans may need him. They obviously moved on from Stephon Gilmore smartly. They have two rookies in Higgins and the other kid from Iowa State, but I don't expect that Tank Dell's ever going to play football again. So you lose both him and Gilmore. I think Mechie has a real shot to be a very valuable role player for that. I know they have Christian
Diggs?
Kirk. Huh?
Are you talking about Diggs?
Diggs and Dell are both gone.
Oh yeah, you said Gilmore. I thought I didn't. I thought you were talking
Sorry.
about Diggs.
So
Okay.
they have the two Iowa State kids. They have Christian Kirk. I don't know that you're going to necessarily bank on any of those guys. And John Mechie has done some things with CJ Stroud. I think John Mechie could end up being a bigger factor with the Texans than some people expect for that reason.
Yeah, I was impressed with him last year. At times, he really came on, and love his story, obviously. Now, the goofiest thing in this article, we don't have to go through this as much, unless you wanted to hit on any of them, except for, Demario Douglas, the Colts. Demario Douglas
was the one thing that looked like it might be working for the Patriots. I don't.
Yeah, they're not going to trade him.
Wouldn't think so unless the deal is too good to be true, but I'd be shocked.
Look at this one. Jerry Jeudy to the Panthers.
Sure. The Browns just signed him for the $75 million, which feels like a steal right now. They're going to turn around and give up what is going to be a 26-year-old receiver who just is coming off a 1,200-yard season and might I think was better than even, on second look at him, I thought was even better than the initial look. No shot. The Panthers would have to give up a ton for him. And in a world where the Browns ever find a quarterback, they're going to need somebody to throw the ball to, and Jerry Jeudy's that guy right now. That if you are trying to make for all the people who are like ready to move on from Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, if you're trying to make the defense, you lead with Jerry Jeudy. This is a huge pickup that was a shining star for you after he did little to nothing against it with the Denver Broncos, especially that last year. And I couldn't care less about the NFL's top 100 because I know how stupid the framework is on how they put that list together. But nevertheless, I think Jerry Jeudy was a terrific player this year and that last year. And it is one of the biggest reasons for people to be sort of excited to watch the Browns. There are people,
absolutely.
That Denver Broncos game was, there were any number of people who were sort of like, oh man, how's this going to be? Maybe Jameis will do something. Well, he did. He just kept getting the ball to Jerry Jeudy, and that was one of the most exciting primetime games. The Browns had two of the most exciting primetime games of the year.
Yeah,
and Jerry Jeudy was at the heart of both of them.
Snowgate. I was impressed, at second watch, to your point, and I actually talked about this on Things I Think I Know last Friday. I was impressed with him. We knew that, I knew that he could get open and he could separate, but his ability to go up and win at the catch point in some of those games, I was impressed with. I did not know, I didn't know that was really in his bag like it was in the snow game, especially. He went up a couple times and won some really big contested catches. Part of his game that I did not, less advertised part of Jerry Jeudy's game, but I thought was terrific.
Well, I can't remember which game it was, but there was at one point where he had a bad drop off his body, and it seemed like he made a very concerted effort to start plucking the ball out of the air with his hands. And that was a huge reason why he was so impactful in that Snow Bowl, is because he was willing to go out and reach and get the ball with his hands, which is, enabled him to make several huge plays in that game. But yes, I think so much of Jerry Jeudy is he showed more than people believe he had. There's a reason the Browns were able to get him for a 5th and 6th round pick in the end. Teams largely, particularly the Broncos, wrote him off. Not only did he prove that he was good enough to be worth the 5th and 6th round pick, but he showed, to your point, new elements to his game, which just enhanced his value. And now, it's the next element of the Amari Cooper trade. And if he can have another 1,000-yard season, this is a testament to how sad the receiving position has been for the Browns. He's going to be one of the best receivers on the team since the team came back. There are just so few that have multiple 1,000-yard seasons. It's basically like Amari Cooper, and that's about it.
Josh Gordon in 1 year.
Yeah, Josh Gordon never, he had the 1,600 yards in even a truncated year because of suspension, but he never broke 1,000 again. I mean, Jarvis Landry hit 1,000. Odell Beckham hit 1,000. Terrell Pryor hit 1,000. But they've yet to really have guys who have been able to sustain that excellence. And that's sort of one of the things for Jerry Jeudy is if he can sustain that excellence, that is something the Browns simply have not had outside of Amari Cooper.
Factual. Yes, MC. It's that time. It's the React on the OBR streaming network. Slap that sub button. Hit that like. Do all the things down below. This is the React on the OBR streaming network. I'm Brad Ward. That's Pete Smith. Let's finish up here with hang around. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Allergies, bad. Pollen in the air. It's crazy. But hang around for Garage Beers at 9:00. Coach of the Blue Jackets on with the guys tonight. But right now we're going to go to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show for breaking down of potential future extensions. I was going to do some of the Judkins stuff they did, but it's so egregious. You can't do it.
The Cleveland Browns, obviously in a week and change, or 2 weeks and change, are going to start training camp here, and obviously their salary cap is a bit of a mess, but it's that time of year when you start thinking about who could be due an extension. Mm-hmm. Greg Newsome's on his last year under contract. Martin Emerson's under his last year under contract. David Njoku's under his last year under contract. What do we think about extensions for any of those three guys?
Man, Martin Emerson, if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, I would have told you he was definitely in line to get an extension. Mm-hmm. And, he comes in as a third-round pick. He supplants and takes Greg Newsome's minutes, and then Greg Newsome's a first-round pick. You think, oh, man, this guy's going to be ready to go. Problem is he started to show little cracks in his game. The problem when you're a big corner is, you want to be long and you want to be rangy, Tyvis, but hey man, when you start looking a little stiff in the hips, when you start, when your recovery speed ain't really there, and then you start to say, well, listen, he's not really jumping no routes, so you can't have safety speed at cornerback. That's not a thing. One thing Denzel Ward got is he faster than everybody, low key, and his recovery speed is tremendous. So he's going to be able to get that. But Martin Emerson, there were some times last year where it's like, ooh, are they picking on you a little bit? I think he's going to have a bounce back year in order to get, the type of bag he wants because he has the size. Big corners are going to demand some money. But the problem is I need that fluidity in the hips, and you got to be able to turn and run. And I don't know if he can do that. You tell me.
I think that he's actually shown us, the first couple of years that he has the ability to hang with a lot of receivers. I mean, just a year ago, before the season started, when they had to join practice with the Vikings, they talked about him versus Justin Jefferson. He had some reps against Justin Jefferson when he looked really good. He was able to stop Justin Jefferson. So he has what it takes, and he has the intangibles to be able to do it. Consistency is the thing. That's how you stay in the NFL. That's how you get money. Can you consistently be a top corner in the league? You showed a glimpse. You showed us what you can do 2 years ago under Jim Schwartz's first year of defense. You were lights out. You, led the league in, completion percentage. Nobody could really get to your side. And last year, you fell off by the wayside. Now, the problem is, my question for you is, did that year you had under Jim Schwartz's first year, was it because the D-line was really good and the quarterback didn't have time to really get to you? Was the quarterback play bad that year and that's why it affected what you did? I don't know the answer to that. All I do know is that this season you got a chance to go out there and lock guys down. They're going to test your speed. The one thing about you is that you ran like a 4.5, so everybody don't believe that you're the fastest guy in the world. So they're going to try to beat you off the line and try to get down the field on you. So do you have the recovery speed like G said? If you being a tall guy, hip speed is very important. Can you drop your hips and match the angle of these wide receivers when they come out of their breaks? That's another question that they're going to have. But at the end of the day, it's all in his hands. I think he has what it takes. He has to become smarter, because I played with a corner who had the same problems. Ran a 4.5, tall corner, actually had dreadlocks like you too. His name was Richard Sherman, but he was so smart and he understood how they were going to attack him, and he got interceptions. If you want to really break the bank and get a bag, know that they're going to try you on the deep routes and make sure you make them pay by getting the interceptions. I know you played the ball really well because you led the SEC in pass breakups when you came out, and you really did a good job when you, like 2 years ago when you was playing, you tracked the ball really well there. So try to get more interceptions this.
All right. Richard Sherman, more of a zone corner.
Yes.
And in year one, Emerson was more of his own corner. Because under Joe Woods, they were in that same, Seattle 3, cover 3. Year two, under Schwartz, it's interesting. They would start Newsome and Ward on the outside. And then when they got out of base and went to nickel, they would kick Newsome inside and bring Emerson on the field on the outside. He had a tremendous year that year. Year three, they just started Emerson and Ward and brought Newsome off the sideline into play nickel. Not that that's a big difference, but you think that plays any impact? And then, me and Casey have kind of subscribed to the thought that we thought he was maybe hurt a little bit last year.
Okay. First thing I'm going to notice is, did you see the difference between those two responses?
Yes.
I'm just going to leave that there.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to touch it. You saw it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Second, I'm going to say is, I don't think that Emerson being the full-time starting corner hurt so much. I mean, it does sort of allow the potential for you to be exposed. What I've been told in talking to Lane is that, look, it's a position where little physical mistakes or little mental mistakes, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it was necessarily the Justin Jefferson thing. But there's reason to believe that was part of it. But there was a sense that Martin Emerson thought he made it.
Yeah.
And that, he did not, he as opposed to continuing to sort of build and climb and keep working and grinding all those things, it now felt like, I'm at the top of the mountain and I'm already here. That sort of, and that's tough to fix during the season. Because you start getting, you start having bad games, and it's tough to sort of recoup that. You don't trust your technique, and things sort of snowball. The pass rush absolutely is a factor. I think Tyvis Powell's right. Denzel Ward is largely an excellent corner. I mean, there's a reason he gets paid the money he gets because he's going to be a good corner regardless.
Yeah.
Martin Emerson is not going to get Sauce Gardner money. I just don't think that's ever in the cards for him. But he can earn a contract extension and function at a high level in a defense where the Browns get a ton of pass rush. Because if he's a press corner and the timeline is so truncated that all he has to do is jam and then sort of
timing,
quick carry as opposed to extended carry of a play, then it's going to cover its own, it's going to cover itself in a lot of ways. I mean, there were times, and it wasn't limited to Martin Emerson, where famously, even when the Browns beat the Bengals to start the 2023 season in that rain monsoon game, there were a number of receivers that either Joe Burrow just didn't have time to get to or open, or the pressure was there too fast, or the weather just made it impossible. So I think everything. I think Tyvus is spot on in a lot of what he's saying, and really well done. But I do think it's all part of it. Pass rush. Martin Emerson's going to have to be successful in part because the pass rush is successful. I don't think he can be a Denzel Ward type unless, to Tyvus's point, he's perfect in everything else. There's just no room for error. But I do think there's obviously the volatility is there. Clearly, he can play at a much higher level. And the other reason the Browns drafted Martin Emerson is because at the time, T. Higgins, George Pickens, and I think Chase Claypool may have still been in the division at that point. Now it's DK Metcalf. So Martin Emerson's spot is sort of in. So now you got DK Metcalf. Now you got T. Higgins still here with signing an extension. The Ravens don't necessarily have a big body receiver like that, but they're going to play teams that play like that. And look, Denzel Ward is phenomenal. He can fit in DK Metcalf's pocket. Like he's a child at that point in that context, and T. Higgins is just too big for him, and he's got to deal with Jamar Chase. So they need this ability now. That maybe we get to a point where, again, depending on how some of these other guys go, and it's obviously not how you want to do this financially with Greg Newsome, but it may be matchup dependent, where you're sitting there going, depending on who we play this week. The Ravens, for example, they don't really have a guy that sort of naturally projects to be a good matchup for Martin Emerson, where they say, Greg Newsome, you're going to be the outside corner here. And if it's Mitchell, if it's Miles Harden, whoever it is that can sort of give you the best matchup, then maybe that's the best way to do it. And that Denzel Ward is really the only piece that's just immobile. Like this is your guy, and everything else is sort of working around him.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just actually going to ask you that a similar question to that. Like, is there a way they can just do a better job of like a little bit last year? Schwartz is kind of stubborn about, Ward on the left side, Emerson on the right side. They don't really follow best receiver type deals. And so they could run Malik Neighbors to Emerson's side whenever they wanted to, and got a ridiculous matchup, and he torched him all game. Like,
that was the game plan. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Can you dictate, you know what I mean, to the offense more of those matchups, or be more fluid in how you adjust to that type of thing, so you don't end up with the small scat quick wide receivers on Emerson whenever they want to be.
So either he's got to be so sound in his jam that he doesn't miss, or that pass rush has to be so fast that they can make up the difference and eliminate their room for error. Because you're right, like undoubtedly, the second you get to a team that's not coached like the Bengals, you're going to get somebody smart enough to realize we can manufacture, most likely the Ravens the next week. We can manufacture the matchups we want and take advantage accordingly.
Yeah. That for a lot of the second half, I think, became part of the problem. Part of what was in his head was that he was getting those kind of mismatches all day. So, something to ponder.
Season, stay on top of the routes and know that they're going to attack you deep.
So in the end, would you guys offer him an extension now?
No.
Would you offer Greg Newsome an extension?
No.
It depends on what we do. Like,
yeah, I would consider.
I'd consider Geno.
I actually would consider Newsome.
Right now?
I'm sorry. I would not give Greg Newsome an extension. I would consider an extension for Emerson if I can get him at a bargain basement rate. Like, if you're willing to take a cheap deal.
That's why you would do it.
Consider that if I'm the Browns.
Who's behind them right now? I don't think they're.
Cam Mitchell is behind them. I don't think they got nothing in the pipeline like that.
They don't.
No. And so it's like, if you get them for cheap, because look, I don't believe in addition by subtraction. Like, you losing people, if they're frontline starters, the Browns have not done a good job of showing me.
The guy's a bad guy or a bad lot, which he's not. So,
they haven't shown that they developing next guy up guys.
No, not at all.
So
I would consider it the right price, but
if I could be frank.
Yes, please.
Because Friday.
You don't want to be Tyvus?
I'm going to be frank.
Okay.
On Fridays, I keep it real because that's what I do.
Keep it real Friday.
I question a lot of people. I question 4 out of the 5 people in the secondary. I really do. The only person that I'm 100% certain is Denzel Ward. But Grant Delpit, Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, Ronnie Hickman. I got to see it because it's the inconsistency.
Grant Delpit, you got to see more from.
I have questions about Denzel Ward. Namely, why the hell do coverage breakdowns keep happening because of him? So,
Yeah.
I'm not going to cut him or anything, but I do have that question. Yeah, I like Grant Delpit. I'm fully on board with Grant Delpit. That doesn't mean he's perfect because I've said this on numerous occasions.
No.
He's had three great half seasons, and then there's areas where he just sort of disappears or gets hurt or whatever. He's never put together a truly full season. If he does, he'd be one of the best in the league, but he's not there yet. Hopefully he can do that because when he's on, he's outstanding. The idea that you extend Greg Newsome is interesting. One, you'd be doing it because you're trying to get him cheap. But if you're doing it on Tyvis Powell's recommendation, what you're doing is you're betting on his traits. You are betting on it. His athletic testing is insane. He is elite in everything you'd want from a man coverage corner, size, length, speed, all those things. And you're basically saying, look, he's exactly what we want. We're not going to mess around with this. But here's the thing. Unless you're planning on moving him back outside, then what have we been doing to this point? So you're probably not going to do that. So we shall see. I might quibble with the pipeline thing. They have guys. Now it's a question, can any of them step up in a meaningful way? Or, are they just going to be guys? Is Cam Mitchell going to step up and be a real player other than a couple really, really nice flashes in 2023? Is Miles Harden going to 7th round pick? But we're now a year past. It's not. We're not coming out of the FCS ranks anymore. It's time to sort of catch up. And can you do something? Does one of these undrafted free agents step up and give them some value? So I understand where the questions are from Tyvis Powell, and given the unsteadiness of the play, it's also not unfair to sort of sit there and go prove it. Again, I think the pass rush will help in that regard, but they just have to be more consistent.
Yeah, I think it's fair to. I would agree with you. I would quibble with the pipeline thing too, but I think that the year that you find out if there's any, I think if there was nobody that stepped up this year, like if you got nothing from Cam Mitchell in time, or Miles Harden didn't, I know we both kind of liked Miles Harden coming out in his moxie and kind of fit like a similar mental mold to Emerson, an in your face kind of guy, right? Fiery guy. And I feel like if he could step up or Mitchell could step up this year, this would be the year to prove that. I think saying that there's nobody in the pipeline now is a year shy of giving them that. But if after this year nobody steps up, I think that's a fair evaluation.
At that point, corner they need. At that point, we're talking about adding more help there.
Yes. So it has to be this year, kind of.
Agreed.
For those guys. All right, so that's going to wrap things up. We're going to get out of here so you can get your beers and go to the garage for a special edition of Garage Beers tonight, and enjoy Mike Keefe and their special guest, head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Any parting words tonight for our viewers and listeners? You can view the show. Make sure you watch back, hit like, hit subscribe on YouTube, and you can listen to it where all popular podcasts are found. The OBR streaming network. Get over to theobr.com. What do you got to say, Pete?
One, stay tuned and watch the interview with Dean Evison. And then two, subscribe to the OBR. We released what we've been told on Dylan Gabriel. There's some other insider notes. There's going to be more of those coming as we get set for training camp. So make sure you don't miss any of that stuff. So you're ready to go when the Browns get going.
Some juicy stuff. And then as well, get over to the website. Become a VIP today. Get in the forums. Get involved in the best Browns community going over at the Orange and Brown Report, the RBR.com. Read Pete. It's fantastic. Read everybody over there. But yeah, keep it locked as we will have a special edition show for you next Monday, the 21st. A whole cast of us will be here for the training camp kickoff show, 7 p.m. July 21st, next Monday. So expect everybody to be here then for lots of fun as we get things kicked off with training camp session 1 coming on the 23rd. With that, we're going to get out of here. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. This has been another edition of The React. Enjoy Garage Beers next. We are out.